people do, isn't it?
But, you know, it all started with sort of a half-time employee, and now we've got, I don't know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 750 people work there. So there's a gigantic change in what's happened over the 14 years we've been going.
Cool. We'll come back a little bit to the foundation, but let's go back further in time. And one of the things that really struck me in your book was talking about inculcating the habit of philanthropy in your kids and your family from a young age, as long as some of your family traditions. And it was a very telling, interesting part of the book. I remember the part where you talked about Mary saying to the kids, you know, how much of your allowance do you plan to give to the Salvation Army this Christmas? Almost as though there wasn't really an option. It was not if, it was how much. And I'm curious, kind of in your mind as a father, how did you get all your 3 kids to start thinking about philanthropy as early as you did?
Well, you know, I think, I don't think there was anything extraordinary about that. I think that speech from a mother is a commonplace at dining tables in this country. It's certainly not uniform, but I mean, she grew up in a family where her mother and dad were involved in doing charitable things and being active in the community. I grew up in a family like that. It's something we just kind of learned and took for granted as being part of life. So, and we continued to talk about it, of course, when we had our own family. And, you know, I think, well, I know, as a matter of fact, that my children would say, well, it just came naturally. It was something that was part of the fabric of the place where we lived.
I believe you said in your book you also take your grandchildren on a trip to get to know them better. You have kind of a 10-year, I think it's the 10th birthday
We do, as
trip.
a matter of fact, yes.
And I assume you still have that same conversation or something like it, but how has that conversation changed from where you were 40 years ago to where you are today? That must be a somewhat different conversation, or not.
I don't know that it is. You know, obviously, the the fundamental circumstance of the presence of wealth is different, but I don't think it really is. I'm sure that all of the 8 grandchildren have had the same general exposure. Now, I really don't know how Bill and Melinda manage that. And they have a very special problem of having to raise 3 children to grow up to be somewhere in the range of normal human beings, and that's very tricky stuff. And I'm not really too clear about all of the discipline that they have, all of the planning that they've done to avoid the obviously negative possibilities that can occur from growing up around that kind of wealth. So anyway, I sort of changed the subject onto there, and I'm sorry, John, but I don't think there's a fundamental change.
Okay. Well, I would think for the kids, especially if you see your parents kind of going around the world, whether it be to New York high schools or to South Africa and working on HIV/AIDS, I would think that for the kids, certainly, you know, if they mirror the parents, seeing the parents devoting their lives to that must just have, I mean, such an amazing effect on the kids. You mentioned in your book about Libby, one of your daughters, and I love the story about her cold calling Michael Jordan and eventually succeeding, which I think is a fantastic story of perseverance and thinking big and dreaming big. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that story?
Well, it has its basis in Make-A-Wish, which many of you are familiar with, and she was active in that. And there was this young woman in the hospital who had this urge to meet Michael Jordan, and I happened to fall to Libby, whose assignment it was to meet with this young lady, and who was a very charming. She was a low teens, like 11 or 12, somewhere in that neighborhood. And so, what do? So you try to figure out some way to find somebody at the other end of the line who knows something about talking to Michael Jordan, which she did. She figured out some way to do that, and she called and talked to the person who answered at his office or whatever it was about Make-A-Wish, and how there's this young lady in the hospital in Seattle that would really, really love to hear from Michael Jordan. And, you know, she didn't have a lot of optimism about this, but then, I don't know, a week or so later, somebody comes chasing her down and said, Libby, get on the phone. It's Michael Jordan. And it's a very exciting thing, of course. And she made an arrangement with him to call the young lady in her hotel room, and at a fixed time. And of course, it was, you know, it was an enormous 5 minutes. Bring tears to your eyes just thinking about what a great thing it was for that young lady who died about a year later. And unfortunately, so it was a very fundamental Make-A-Wish kind of an event, which was extremely very constructive thing to do. Just wonderful.
It's a beautiful story. Yeah. You're listening to the Commonwealth Club of California radio program. We're talking with Bill Gates Sr., father of Bill Gates, who's talking about the importance of showing up for life, which is the title of his book. Showing Up for Life, Thoughts on the Gifts of a Lifetime. We are recording this program in San Francisco, California. Mr. Gates, you talk also quite a bit about family traditions and the value of family traditions. And one of the ones I loved, I can't remember exactly what you called it, I think it was the exchange dinner, where you and a group of your friends would actually each take each other's kids out to dinner. Talk a bit about that. I thought that was a fantastic idea, and I kind of had wished my parents had inculcated that habit. It sounded like a lot of fun because it got you out of the house.
Well, this was an occurrence within the business of a summer place that we went to each summer for some 14 years. Same families, 8 families, same basic age levels. And over time, we came to develop these traditions of one kind or another: tennis tournament, singing at the campfire, a whole array of them. But one of them, which someone came up with quite early, was the notion that one evening there'd be a drawing and the kids would go have dinner in one of the other families' cabins. And it doesn't seem like very much, and I probably exaggerated, but you know, part of it, of course, is the regularity of that event. Every summer, basically same people doing similar things, getting to know each other really quite well. And these are people that we would see in between. It wasn't just at summer. And then this business of going to your friends' parents, having dinner with them, seeing how dinner works in somebody else's house and how the conversation goes and that sort of thing. And at the same time, you know, Mary and I had whatever, 2 or 3 children from other families who came and sat and had dinner with us. And it was more than just dinner. It was something that would take a couple of hours to get some conversation going and that sort of thing. And it seemed to me that it was, and I have little doubt that it would occur to you that this is a constructive thing to have happen, to get to really kind of know and see inside how another family works and how to compare it with your own situation, and at the same time, of course, have a good conversation with good people. But that, as I say, we did that summer thing. It was a 2-week summer stay at this kind of rundown old cabin camp, and over 14 years, that the accrual of that experience unquestionably was a positive thing for our kids and the other kids. It was a wonderful thing. The whole business. It was the place. The name of this old cabin camp was Cheerio. So that event was Cheerio, and that among the I don't know however many 25 kids involved in Cheerio, that's a big word in their lives. They remember, talk about Cheerio, they're ready to talk about that in a hurry.
There is also a family tradition, and I apologize in advance for bringing this up, but it is in your book, so I have to. The family tradition that I thought quite possibly might have been outlawed by the Geneva Convention, the matching Christmas pajamas.